Stargirl Season 3. This is the full spoiler review. I have a review up on my blog, soundofbettermyhead.com. There's like maybe a couple tiny spoilers in there, like nothing too bad. I am giving this season a 2 out of 5. It wasn't bad, it was just disappointing. The big thing about this season was there was a murder mystery. Pretty much right off the bat, the gambler is killed, and there's a good chunk of time where JSA is trying to figure out who killed him, which is fine. But this is just nothing but like red herrings. They're constantly like, ooh, this person probably did it. Look at this person's suspicious. And it was so blatant that it's like, you know what? I can almost bet like none of these people did it. And it's going to be something totally different, which was basically the case. So it just felt like they were wasting their time with false information. You really weren't getting to like what happened. And then when you do get the reveal, it's like pretty much out of left field. You're just like, wait, what? You know, Iceco and Ultra Humanite and the Dragon King were all sort of kind of teaming up, and it gets so convoluted. And even when it gets to the reveal, it just blows past it. Like it just, the murder mystery is basically irrelevant into the final couple episodes of the show. So you kind of wasted your whole time with this murder mystery, and there's no there was like not really a big resolution to it. The other thing this season was hyped up on the Frenemies subtitle, and that actually ended up working out. You had the Sportsmaster and his wife moved in next door to Pat and his wife, and they were trying to be friends with him, but obviously these guys are like kind of evil. They're not really socialized, and they were bad guys, but they actually made it work in the end where they felt like, you know what, these people actually became friends, and these supervillains were really trying to kind of redeem themselves. I mean, they're still killers, but they were getting pushed to be like, good guys. And I think it kind of worked, and there was some nice friendships and nice interactions between everybody. So I thought that actually worked out pretty well. As far as the other character arcs, I thought they kind of fell flat outside of the main storylines. Besides the frenemies and besides the murder mystery, I don't think anything was that great. Like, they tried to do the thing with Courtney and Icicle Jr., and there was moments, but I just never got into the relationship. He always just seemed so dark. It always seemed like he was just on the verge of like killing everybody and becoming a bad guy. It was hard to really see her want to be with him. Especially, you knew eventually the shoe was going to drop, that he'd find out, they killed his father, and she was Justice Society, and all that stuff. You knew that was coming. You figured that could push him over the edge. So I never got into their relationship the way the show wanted me to. Like I said, Pat didn't get a ton to do. There was this kind of thing where they hinted that he could have been a better father than Mike, but that really never got brought up again. You had the Our Man stuff, and initially it looked like his thing was going to be trying to resurrect Grundy, but that really just kind of got dropped off the whole story. Then it went to the Addicted to the Hourglass powers, which is okay. Kind of wrapped up a little abruptly. Beth didn't get like a ton to do. Like, she just kind of randomly showed up to hack something, and it just seemed like they really had a hard time, for her to do anything. Just try to periodically use the goggles to do something. And then they seemed like they really had nothing to do with Mike, for Mike and Jakeem, so they made them like this team that was kind of doing their own thing in the background. It really ultimately didn't help all that much, and then they were trying to buddy up with Shiv, and that just kind of went nowhere. Just felt like they were just like, oh, we got to find something for these guys to do, so they'll do some shit off to the side, and it would tie in at the end somehow. They got sidetracked. They did this thing with Alan Scott's kids, and it looked like all that was to set up some stuff for the JSA down the road, and the Infinity Inc. and all that, and it was fine, but I mean, I think when they wrote and filmed it, they didn't know the show was being canceled yet. So it's like, okay, you introduced a bunch of stuff that's not going to pan out. It was just more of a detour that really didn't add into the main story too much. I mean, yeah, you eventually ended up with the Shadowlands, and that was some backstory on Shade and Pat, but other than that, it didn't add much to the show. And then you get to all the big reveals that the main bad guy is the Ultra Humanite, which is weird because he's supposed to be this major bad guy, like the toughest foe the JSA ever fought. But I thought they said that about Eclipso. Like Eclipso was supposed to be the worst thing ever. So now apparently it's Ultra Humanite. And that was okay for a reveal. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, Icicle was still alive, and he's working with him. And then the other twist, it actually Dragon King's alive because his brain's in the Ultra Humanite gorilla body, but the Ultra Humanites and Starman somehow, and they're all working together with Icicle. And like the Starman stuff, it was supposed to be this big reveal, and it's supposed to show you how, like, oh yeah, it was all adding up to this, and everything adds up perfectly fine. If you look at the clues, you see where we're going, and I don't think they sold that. You know, some of it worked, okay, I see where you're going, but a lot of it just didn't feel like it really was going that direction. And just the amount of shit that he knew about Starman, like, how can you not know some of this stuff without being, you know, Sylvester? Like, how to use the staff, there's like so much stuff, like, there's no way you could have just studied and talked to Pat and Sylvester's friends and like, okay, now I know how to master the cosmic staff and do some, you know, wild stuff that Courtney could never even dream of. And just some of the details he knew and the way he knew these details. I know he's supposed to be an actor and he studies, but it just didn't feel like it worked like as well as I thought it did. And, you know, it just wasn't as clever. Now, maybe part of Sylvester's brain was still in there somewhere and he got his memories. They did like a different type of, you know, implanting. That I would have bought that. But the way they did it, I don't think it really sold it. But I think that's it for the main part of the show. You know, like I said, I just didn't. It was uneven. It had potential, and it just didn't work out. I just said the frenemy stuff was decent. I wish that would have been nice to see all those guys come together at the end. But you know, they killed off the Sportsmaster and his wife, so we didn't really see that. And even Artemis didn't even show up for the final battle. She had her thing at the post-credit scene, or almost the post-credit scene. It was kind of almost like multiple endings on this show this season. But let me go through my notes, see if there's anything else I want to mention. Again, they didn't use Artemis very much. Like, I kind of got the impression she was going to be on the JSA, but then she would just kind of pop up, help in a fight, and then disappear for like a whole bunch of episodes. We got the new voice of the Thunderbolt Genie, which I believe was Seth Green doing the voice this time, which he did all right, but it was a little jarring because you gotta get used to the last Genie voice. They barely showed him this season. I think they only showed him like once or twice, and it was all just a pen sparkling. But I don't know, it took a little getting used to having a replacement. Then they had this thing where Beth's parents were trying to help her do her superheroing thing, and it was kind of weird because, like, do you think they would be protective? And it's like, instead of saying, no, you're a teenager, you shouldn't be out there putting your life on the line, it's like, oh, let's help you fight crime. Like, it just seemed kind of out of character for them. I mean, I could see that they want to be in their daughter's lives, but it just seemed kind of weird that they're so supportive of it, like, you know, because Courtney had a hard time getting, like, you know, the parents to back her when she wanted to be a hero. But, like, now, like, Beth actually had to talk her parents to leave her alone, to, you know, let her do her own thing. Then a little nitpick, you know, Shiv got the gambler's laptop and she was trying to hack it, and she tried all these times, and this little thing kept popping up. But you think of a hacker like the gambler had a laptop that he wanted to keep secret, he'd probably have something like one, maybe two attempts, and it just would, you know, lock you out and you couldn't try it again. Like, it just seems kind of silly that you'd be like, oh yeah, people can try as much as they want. That was kind of funny seeing how socially awkward, you know, Tigress was. Like, you know, season one, it seemed like she was just like a normal person, and behind the scenes she was a, you know, mass murderer, basically, a bad guy. This season, we're seeing that she doesn't seem to know how to interact with normal people, which kind of made her, it kind of helped her character like be more like sympathetic. And then Starman fighting Sportsmaster and Tigress, like, he pretty much kicked their ass. He could have killed them both. Like, it seemed like he should have mopped the floor with half the ISA back in the day, like just by himself. Like, it seems kind of crazy that they took down the JSA. And I said there's other points later on you see like how good of a fighter it is. Like, I was like, how did this guy? And this is not even the real Starman. It seems like the real Starman should have been even better at his job. Also, I should have brought this up in my character arcs. Once again, it's Yolanda's thing is just family drama. We do get, it looked like there was some repairing the relationship between her and her mother, which ended up once again going sour. Then you had the whole thing where she was going to the priest early on because, was that season 1? We'll cross that out. And like I said, just her and her mom fighting again, and there never really was a solid resolution to it. She's kind of like at the end, well, Mom, we should talk. They did the Starman character again. It makes more sense with the explanation at the end, but he was really inconsistent. Like he'd be like a decent dude, then he'd kind of fly off the handle. He'd give people advice that seemed really stupid at the time, but it kind of fit with his character. But I said, then in the end, it turns out that was supposedly all a ploy because he was trying to divide the team. And the whole thing with the cameras was kind of weird because I guess Icicle was spying on everyone, and there was like, for some reason, there was like 20 cameras in, Pat's house in the basement. And the thing is, Starman was working with them, and so it's like, it seemed like he could just report back and tell them, like, he didn't need that much cameras, especially in the basement where Starman, well, that's where he slept. Like, why do you need 20 cameras to watch a guy that's working with you? Unless they were hoping that they found them all down there or make them look more innocent. I don't know. I thought that was a little overkill. It really never explained why they needed to have that much surveillance over everybody. Like, it just kind of went nowhere. Then for some reason he's working on a puzzle that looked like it was hinting at who was the bad guy. That really went nowhere. When Icicle was sitting in his little camera room. The fight with Wildcat and Shiv was decent. It was kind of weird because I think it was the first time they really were rooting for Shiv and rooting against Wildcat in a fight. I thought it was pretty obvious when they found Obsidian that they weren't torturing him, that they were actually trying to stop something. Like he had something in him that had to be controlled. So I knew that was going to be a problem, but they tried to free him. Like I said, the Shadowlands stuff didn't do much for me. We got a little bit of backstory on Shade and Pat, but they didn't really expand on it after that. They just kind of got more or less dropped. And then the stuff with Obsidian and his sister, it just whatever. It just kind of ended. He was going to leave. And then it was a silly part. He's standing there with everybody, got his backpack, like he's leaving. And then someone's like, oh, you're leaving? Like, well, he's standing there with his backpack. So yeah, he looks like he's ready to go. I did think it was a nice moment when Yolanda and Courtney forgave each other, and Yolanda ended up staying with her family for a little while because she had the stuff with her mom, so I thought that was nice. Like I said, there was a few occasional nice little character moments, but the other seasons have had stronger moments between the family members and the friends that I thought really helped propel the show and make it that much more engaging. And this season didn't seem to have as many of them. Then they had the kind of weird thing where like the art teacher showed up at Icicle's parents' house, or Icicle Jr.'s grandparents, and then they just kind of randomly murder them, and it just got brought up a couple times, but it just seemed kind of like unnecessary. Like, it's not like he was, I don't know, just like, oh yeah, we killed the guy, whatever. Then you had that big fight scene at that house, which was decent, but it's like, you got these really old, these old people, and they're like fighting like, karate masters, and everybody's doing flips, like especially, Icicle Jr., he's doing like crazy like Power Rangers flips and kicks, and everyone's like a karate master, and suddenly Beth has this like fighting mode on her in her gauntlets that let her like like a combat mode. It was just like all this weird shit was something going on. Like, so they said all of a sudden everybody was like whooping ass, and then it just kind of went nowhere. I thought the grandpa was done for, and then suddenly they had Beth save him at the last minute, which really didn't quite pay off as much as it could have, of him being saved by her. And then you had the big reveal with the Ultra Humanite. Unfortunately, my DC lore is not as strong as what I know about my Marvel lore, so I didn't know who he was supposed to be. Just like there was a lot of Easter eggs when they were doing the Infinity Inc. episodes, and I didn't know who any of these characters were supposed to be. I had to go back and look it up after the fact, which is fine. That's what Easter eggs are for. They're for the fans. And they go, oh, that's there, but everyone else, you don't have to know a lot of this stuff. And they, obviously they explain who Ultra Humanite is after his reveal. They did like Courtney, the protected brother, lying and saying that she's the one that killed Icicle. I was very surprised not only to see the Icicle not dead, but to see him murder Sportsmaster and Tigress. Especially because they finally got to the point where they really felt like they were in a good place of redemption and friendship with the Dugans. But then it seemed weird because like Icicle was hidden all this time, recuperating. They even implied that he was still having trouble like keeping himself like human form. But then all of a sudden he just went back home, went back to his job, like everything was back to normal. Like I said, it seemed like he didn't have it quite under control, and then he just did, and everything was fine. A couple times he'd be like, oh, then he'd just go back to normal. Actually, with as little as we know about the Artemis character, it was pretty sad to see her like break down after her parents died, like because she really never showed emotions throughout the show besides just anger. So I think it really hit harder because she's so like closed off to see her break down like that and see like the Dugans reach out to her. And then we get the weird flashback. We see the Ultra Humanite when he was in the Actress, and apparently she was pretty feral and almost gorilla-like back then when she killed some dude. And then there was also nice seeing the Dragon King as a fully human man still back then. But like I don't know how long the JSA was around, because they were talking about back then the JSA being a problem. This looked like it was maybe in like the 40s, maybe even earlier. It's like I don't know who the members of the JSA were and who would have been around back then. Like it was kind of vague how the timeline worked. And then speaking of timelines, when we get to the finale, like I don't know when everything happened. They said 9 months ago they resurrected Starman and took his brain out, and then I guess they were gonna immediately that's when they put the Ultra Humanite's brain in there. But the Dragon King was around for a while, and he died fighting the JSA in season 1, so I don't know when they would have had time to put his brain back in the Ultra Humanite's gorilla body. So I don't know if after he died they brought the body back and took the brain out, or did something. I don't know. They never explained it. The timelines didn't seem to match up. And it's fairly brutal that they took his brain out while he was still alive and conscious and feeling everything. And I wasn't too excited to see the Grandpa and Grandma Icicle back in action. And they didn't really do shit this time around. And then the Grandma got a car dropped on her. And then finally, they had a halfway decent explanation of how Pat freed himself and dug out of that grave. But like he got dug out of the grave, somehow got back to the garage and got his stripe armor, and then someone must have told him where the kids were meeting, and then he was able to get in the suit and fly there just in time to help the kids. Like I don't know how he pulled all that off. And they never even bothered to explain it. They had one nice moment, because they always talk about how it is hard to wish with the Thunderbolts, and usually the wishes go sideways unless you're super, super specific. There was a nice moment too where they were very specific about taking away Icicle's powers, but then it turned out it would kill him, and the genie's not allowed to kill, which that was a nice attempt. But anyways, Joaquin sounds like the stupidest wish, but there was a line early on about when you make a wish, you have to have intent behind it, and the way they did it was kind of cool. Where he intended to save Shiv, and the way even though the wish was phrased pretty half-assed, but the genie actually picked up on it and he actually did his job properly. So, like I said again, we don't get to see these characters after this season, so he actually would have been a pretty formidable hero, being able to control the genie like that. And then the final fight, there was a couple okay moments, but it was pretty flat, and we didn't even see too much of the classic wire work that they always do, which there was a couple times this season with the wire work like it didn't even make sense, like any kind of logic. Like it was just like, let's flip this guy weird with some wires because it looks cool. It didn't even make any kind of sense to like the fight. Like it's one thing that's impossible. It just really even made sense to like the fight scene. And then this weird thing where like Ice Villain's dad could turn into snowflakes and disappear. I don't know. There was this weird thing that happened at the end. They just kind of came out of nowhere. And then all the shots that Starman probably took to the head, in this new body, like one good shot with a brick from Pat was enough to like take out the, make Ultra Humanite brain dead. And it's kind of weird. And then they did this weird thing where they cut away and you see Starman's real brain, and for some reason someone's got on a loop where it keeps playing his last words. And then they just kind of do the end of the show. It's like, oh, by the way, they got his brain back. Like, I don't know, it was a weird thing. Like, it seemed more like a setup for like a later episode. And then they found out there was the show was canceled. And to be honest, they could have just took that scene out altogether. Like, it was unnecessary at that point. You could just tell me, oh yeah, they did find his brain, but. Then they had the thing where it was supposed to be a big deal that Mike finally got to really reunite with his mom, but it was barely brought up in the season. They should have really pushed that, it was a big deal that Mike wanted to see his mom and that Pat wasn't letting him because she was a bad influence or whatever her problems were. But it was kind of like just there and gone, so there was no impact, to that scene of him, meeting up with his mom for the first time and like since he was a kid. And it was nice seeing Courtney drop off the gambler's letter to his daughter, but again, it was like their first couple of episodes, and then it was never brought up again, so it just didn't have as much impact as it could have, especially since the gambler's murder was just kind of like brushed off, like, oh yeah, but we got more fun stuff to do besides the murder mystery. Then Grundy just kind of randomly comes back up at like the last scene, just as like, Our Man's about to give up on him. Like, I don't know, it just seemed kind of random. I'd rather have him came back and Grundy was already out of the grave before he gave his stupid little speech about everyone got their friends back with me. And like I said, I didn't care enough about Courtney's relationship to like have him come back, and it was nice for her, but it's like I just didn't care about the couple, and it just didn't have the impact that they wanted it to. A little surprised to see Artemis track down Ice Skull and kill him. That was fine. Like I said, she didn't get to do shit in the final battle, so at least she got her revenge. Like I said, it was pretty brutal. She basically burned him alive. And then we took the 10-year in the future jump, and we just hear how, oh yeah, the JSA got back together, and this and that, and this person joined, and kind of like the pie in the sky version of where the show left off. And then you have the Jay Garrick Flashes kind of randomly show up and be like, hey, we need the team. Like, this is kind of weird scene, like, it's a shady soul, like, rah, JSA is awesome. Like, he just, pretty dramatic character change for him. Granted, like, 10 years, and he's been trying to become a good guy. I know it makes sense, but it's a little jarring from where we saw him last. And again, like, it didn't feel so much like they were like doing a cliffhanger. Just kind of felt more like they were like, oh yeah, and the JSA will have more adventures. But then it kind of implied like the JSA wasn't doing shit before that. Like, I don't know, did they break up as a team, or was this no threats? Like, it was a little vague. Like, wait, why is the table retired? Like, they're not doing anything anymore. But I don't know. That's about it. I probably had a lot more to say than I needed to. I just thought the show in general, it was a decent show, just over the whole course of its run. There was some really nice character moments. The special effects were really great the first season when they had the HBO Max budget, or back then when it was still a DC Universe. Then they kind of dropped down a little bit, and the last two seasons were about on par. Like, it was nowhere near as good as they used to be, but they were decent enough for TV. And I said, it was just a little uneven. There was points where the show was great, and then there was points where it was kind of lackluster. And this season had more lackluster than great, I thought. But that's about it. Like I said, I have the other version of this review. I have other reviews for TV shows and movies. I have comic strips. Those are all on soundedbettermyhead.com. So thanks for watching.